The recording crystal hummed to life, casting a pale blue glow across the archive chamber. Commander Vrextal sat in the witness chair, his remaining 2 arms resting on the metal armrests. Where his other 2 arms should have been, there were only scarred stumps covered by the simple cloth of his veteran's uniform. The 3 members of the War Documentation Committee watched him with a mixture of respect and uncomfortable curiosity. Vrextal had been avoiding this moment for 50 years. 50 years since the war ended. 50 years since his people learned the hardest lesson in galactic history. Commander Vrextal, the lead archivist began, her voice formal and measured. The Confederation thanks you for your service and for agreeing to provide testimony. Your account will be sealed for 2 generations as per your request. Vrex nodded slowly. His eyes, all 3 of them, looked tired. I am here because the young must know. They must understand what we faced, what we provoked. The archivist glanced at her notes. Your military record shows distinguished service across 40 colonies. You commanded the 3rd Fleet's ground forces. You were present at first contact with the humans and you survived until the final treaty. Please begin where you feel appropriate. Vrextal was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of memory. We thought they would be easy. He leaned back in his chair and his eyes seemed to focus on something far away. First contact happened in what they call the year 2187. Our scout ships detected their transmissions, their primitive satellites, their single planetary civilization. We had encountered 100 species at that level of development. The pattern was always the same. We arrive, they fear us. They join the Confederation or face consequences. Most choose wisely. The committee listened in silence as Vrex continued. The humans seemed no different at first. They had only just begun to colonize their neighboring planets. Mars, they called it, and some moons. Their military technology was centuries behind ours. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were chemical-based projectiles. We had energy weapons faster than light travel and shield technology they could not even imagine. Vrextal's voice dropped lower. The High Command decided that humanity would be brought into the Confederation by force. They had resources we wanted. Rare minerals, water, strategic position in their spiral arm. The orders came down. Subjugate Earth, claim their colonies, make them useful members of the Confederation. One of the archivists shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew how that decision had ended. I was assigned to the initial assault force, Vrex said. 20,000 ships, 500,000 ground troops. We jumped into their system in what they call March of 2188. We expected panic. We expected quick surrender. We sent the standard message, join us or be destroyed. He paused and something that might have been a bitter smile crossed his face. They destroyed our messenger ship. Not with advanced weapons, with nuclear missiles, primitive fusion bombs attached to rockets. They threw everything they had at that one ship. It took them 6 missiles, but they destroyed it. The lead archivist made a note. That was considered unusual. Unusual? Vrextal's laugh was harsh. It was insane. That messenger ship could have glassed their planet. They had no chance of winning. Any rational species would have negotiated, tried to buy time, sought terms. The humans opened fire. He flexed his remaining fingers, a nervous habit from his military days. That should have been our first warning. But we were arrogant. We thought it was desperation. We thought once they saw our full might, they would collapse. The archive chamber was very quiet now. The battle for Earth lasted 6 months, Vrextal said. We destroyed their orbital defenses in the first week. We controlled the space above their planet within a month. We landed ground forces on all 7 continents. We cut off their supply lines. We had complete tactical superiority. He stopped talking. The silence stretched. Commander? The archivist prompted gently. They never stopped fighting, Vrextal said, and his voice was almost a whisper now. Not for 1 day. Not for 1 hour. We would take a city and they would take it back. We would destroy their command centers and new commanders would appear. We would cut them off from supplies and they would make weapons from scraps. We would surround them, and they would fight their way out or die trying. The memories were flooding back now and Vrex could not stop them. I remember the first time I saw a human soldier up close. We had taken a military base outside a city called Chicago. The battle was over. We were securing the area, and this human, this soldier, came out of a collapsed building. He was wounded. We could see the blood. His armor was cracked. He could barely walk. Vrextal leaned forward. He should have surrendered. Any being with survival instinct would have surrendered. Instead, he charged us. One human, alone, dying. He killed 3 of my soldiers before we brought him down. And even then, even with his body failing, he tried to reach for his weapon. The committee members exchanged glances. That was when I first felt it, Vrex said quietly. Fear, real fear. Not of their technology, not of their numbers. Fear of what they were. These beings who did not know when to stop, he continued, his voice growing stronger. High Command kept sending more troops. They kept saying the humans would break. Any day now they would break. Their economy would collapse. Their will would fail. Their unity would fracture. Brextal shook his head. Instead, they got stronger. They studied our tactics. They learned our weaknesses. They adapted faster than any species we had ever encountered. Within 3 months, they were using our own weapons against us. Within 4 months, they had reverse-engineered our shield technology. By month 5, they were winning ground battles. The lead archivist interrupted. The records show the Confederation had overwhelming numerical advantage throughout the Earth campaign. Numbers meant nothing, Rextal said flatly. You cannot outnumber an enemy that refuses to die. You cannot overwhelm a species that treats every loss as motivation rather than defeat. Every human we killed made the others fight harder. Every city we destroyed became a rallying cry. We were not fighting an army. We were fighting an entire species that had decided we would not win. He looked down at his missing arms. I lost these at the Battle of Kepler 442b. That was their first colony world orbiting a star 11 light-years from Earth. We hit it with everything. We had every advantage. 10-to-1 numbers. Superior position. Complete air superiority. His voice grew cold. They were dug into the mountains around the main settlement. We bombarded them for 3 days. Nothing could have survived. We sent in ground forces to mop up, and the humans came out of those mountains like they had been waiting for us. Rextal closed his eyes. The battle lasted 18 hours. It should have lasted 18 minutes. We lost 60% of our force. I lost both my left arms to a human explosive device. And at the end, when we finally retreated, the humans held their ground. They kept their colony. With 10% of their original force still alive, they won. The archive chamber was completely silent. That was when I knew, Rextal said, opening his eyes. We were not going to win this war. You cannot defeat a species that values victory more than survival. You cannot break beings who see death as an acceptable price for protecting their home. The lead archivist spoke carefully. The records indicate the war continued for 9 more years after Kepler 442b. Yes, Rextal said. 9 more years. Because High Command would not accept what I already knew. But Kepler 442b was where it changed. That was where we stopped being the hunters and became the hunted. He looked directly at the committee. And that is when the real horror began. The recording crystal continued its soft hum as Rextal gathered his thoughts. The committee waited patiently. They had learned that rushing the old commander only made him retreat into silence. After Kepler 442b, the war changed. Rextal began, not in the way High Command wanted. They sent more ships, more troops, better weapons. They were determined to crush the human resistance through sheer force. But they did not understand what we were facing. He shifted in his chair, the memory clearly uncomfortable. The humans did something we had never encountered before. They stopped trying to defend everything. Instead, they started to hunt us. One of the committee members, a younger archivist, looked confused. Hunt you? But you had superior numbers and technology. Rextal's expression was grim. You think numbers matter to a predator? Humans evolved as hunters on their world. Their entire biology is designed for it. Eyes that face forward for tracking prey. Endurance that lets them chase animals until they collapse. Brains that excel at pattern recognition and strategic thinking. We did not invade a civilization. We invaded a planet of predators who had learned to build starships. He continued, his voice taking on a tone that suggested he was reliving the experiences. It started small. Patrol units would disappear. Not destroyed in battle, just gone. We would find their equipment later, stripped of anything useful. The bodies would be missing. At first, we thought it was a cleanup operation. Then we realized the humans were studying us. Rextal leaned forward. They were taking our soldiers, our equipment, our supplies. Not for revenge, for research. While we were trying to win through force, they were learning everything about us. What we ate, how we communicated, how our technology worked. What frightened us? The lead archivist made a note. The records mention increased guerrilla activity during this period. Guerrilla activity, Brextel repeated, and there was something like dark humor in his voice. That is a polite term for what they did. Let me tell you about persistence. He settled back into his chair. We established a forward base on their colony world of New Harmony. It was perfect terrain for us. Open plains, clear sightlines, nowhere for an enemy to hide. We had 15,000 troops stationed there. Full defensive perimeter, automated weapons, sensor networks that could detect movement from kilometers away. Brextel paused. The humans sent one soldier. The younger archivist blinked. One, Brextel confirmed. A sniper, they call it. A human who specializes in killing from extreme distance. We did not know he was there for the first week. Then soldiers started dying. One shot, always fatal. Always from a different location. We would search the area and find nothing. His voice grew quieter. This continued for 3 months. One human, alone, against 15,000 of us. He killed 47 soldiers. He destroyed supply drops. He disabled vehicles. He made us afraid to leave our bunkers. Brextal's remaining hands clenched. We tried everything. We used thermal sensors. He buried himself in the ground to hide his heat signature. We used motion detectors. He moved so slowly they could not register him. We used aerial drones. He only operated at night or during storms. We sent out hunting parties. They never came back. The committee sat in stunned silence. After 2 months, I volunteered to lead a special unit to find him, Brextal said. We had tracking equipment, combat experience. We were 40 trained soldiers against one human. We thought we had the advantage. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. We tracked him for 6 days. Through terrain that should have killed him, he had no supply line, no support. He ate local plants that would have poisoned most species. He drank from contaminated water sources. He slept in the open during storms that drove us into shelter. Brextal's voice dropped. On the 6th day, we found his camp. We thought we had him cornered. We surrounded the position, moved in carefully, and found nothing but a backpack full of rocks and a recording device playing human breathing sounds. The younger archivist gasped softly. He was behind us. Brextal continued. Had been for 2 days, tracking us while we tracked him. He killed 12 of my unit before we even knew he was there. The rest of us ran. We ran from one human with a rifle. When I reported back to base, the commander did not believe me at first. How could one human defeat 40 Confederation soldiers? He looked at each committee member in turn. That is what I mean by persistence. Humans do not give up. They do not know how. Their bodies are built for endurance. On Earth, they used to hunt by chasing prey for days until the animal died of exhaustion. We were that prey, Brextal continued, his tone becoming more urgent. And it was not just their endurance. It was their adaptability. Within 6 months of the war starting, humans were using our weapons better than we did. They would capture our vehicles and modify them. They would steal our communication equipment and use it to trick us. They turned everything into a weapon. He gestured with his remaining arms. I saw humans use mining equipment to destroy tanks. I saw them turn agricultural vehicles into mobile fortresses. I saw them weaponize their own medical supplies by booby-trapping aid stations. They had no honor, we thought. No rules, but that was wrong. They had rules. Just different rules. They had decided that survival of their species justified any tactic. The lead archivist spoke carefully. The reports mentioned that human combat doctrine seemed to change during the war. Change? Brextal shook his head. It evolved, daily. Every battle we fought taught them something new. They shared information across their entire military instantly. A tactic that worked on Earth would be used on their colonies within days. They learned from every defeat, every victory, every casualty. He leaned forward, his voice intense. Do you know what the most terrifying thing was? They got better faster than we did. We had been fighting wars for 10,000 years. They had been a unified species for less than a century, but their capacity to learn, to adapt, to improve was beyond anything we had encountered. Brextal continued. There was an incident on Europa, one of their moons. We had captured a human supply depot, found crates of their military rations. We tested them for poison, found none, and distributed them to our troops. Good food was rare on the front lines. His expression darkened. The rations were not poisoned, but humans can digest things that make most species violently ill. Half our battalion was incapacitated for 3 days. The humans had not set a trap. They had just left their normal food behind, and somehow, they knew we would make that mistake. The younger archivist was writing furiously now. But the worst part, Frextel said softly, was when they started using our weaknesses against us. They learned that most Confederation species have better hearing than humans, so they used sonic weapons that did nothing to them but incapacitated us. They learned that we rely heavily on electronic communication, so they used electromagnetic pulses that disrupted our coordination, but left their simpler backup systems working. He paused, and his voice became almost a whisper. They learned that we take care of our wounded, so they booby-trapped their own casualties. The room fell silent. That was at the Battle of New Damascus, Frextel said. A human unit was surrounded. They fought until they ran out of ammunition. Then they fought with knives. Then their bare hands. When we finally overran their position, there were wounded humans lying in the rubble. Our medics moved in to treat them. Standard protocol. Even enemies receive medical care. His remaining hands trembled slightly. The wounded humans had activated grenades hidden under their bodies. When our medics tried to help them, they detonated, killed 20 of our medical staff. The humans knew they were dying anyway. They chose to take us with them. Vrextal looked up at the committee. That was when I truly understood. We were not fighting soldiers. We were fighting a species that had decided to win or die trying. There was no third option in their minds. No surrender. No retreat. Only victory or death, the lead archivist spoke quietly. And yet the war continued for several more years. Yes, Frextal said, because High Command still believed we could win. Because they had not yet met what I met next. They had not yet encountered a human who was not just fighting for victory, but fighting for revenge. Frextal requested water, and the committee paused the recording briefly. When they resumed, the old commander seemed even more tired than before, as if the memories themselves were draining him. The siege of New Sarajevo, he began without preamble. That is where I learned the final lesson about humans, where I understood that we had made a mistake that could not be corrected. The lead archivist checked her notes. New Sarajevo was a human colony world with a population of approximately 2 million. Confederation forces arrived in force, correct? Yes, Vrextal confirmed. It was year 4 of the war. High Command decided that taking their colonies would break human morale. We jumped in with 300 ships. We offered terms: surrender and be relocated, refuse and be destroyed. He closed his eyes briefly. They refused. Of course they refused. The planetary governor sent a message back. Just 2 words in their language, come try. Vrextal continued. We bombarded the military installations from orbit. Then we landed ground forces, 100,000 troops. The humans had maybe 15,000 soldiers on the entire planet, plus whatever civilians chose to fight. The mathematics said we would take the planet in a week. His voice became hollow. It took us 4 months, and we lost, the younger archivist looked up sharply. Lost? The records show we retreated, Vrextal interrupted. That is the same as losing. We withdrew from New Sarajevo with 30,000 troops left. We left 70,000 dead on that world. The humans lost more, but they kept their planet. That is victory, he shifted in his chair. But I am not here to discuss tactics. I am here to tell you about the medic. Vrextal took a breath. Humans have this role in their military. Medics, they call them. Doctors who go into battle with the soldiers. Their job is to heal, not to fight. They carry weapons, but they are marked with red crosses. In human warfare, medics are supposed to be protected. Even enemies do not shoot medics. The committee listened intently. We did not know this, Vrextal said quietly. We did not understand their customs. We saw armed humans and we engaged. This was during the 2nd month of the siege. We had located a human field hospital in a mountain valley. It was marked with their medical symbols, but our intelligence said it was also being used as a command post. His voice grew strained. We attacked at dawn. 300 soldiers, standard assault pattern. We breached the facility within minutes, and inside we found wounded humans. Dozens of them. And 1 medic. Vrextal paused, and the committee could see the memory affecting him even now, decades later. The medic was a human female, small by their standards. She was treating a wounded soldier when we came in. She looked up at us and she did something I will never forget. She finished bandaging the soldier's wound before she stood up. He continued. She was not armed with a rifle, just a small pistol at her hip. She stood between us and her patients and said something in their language. One of our translators told me later what she said. "You will not touch them." Vrextal's remaining hands clenched. We laughed. 300 trained soldiers against one small human with a pistol. Our commander ordered her to stand aside. She drew her weapon instead. The archive chamber was completely silent. What happened next should be impossible, Vrextal said. She fired 6 shots. 6 of my fellow soldiers died. Headshots. All of them. She moved like nothing I had ever seen, faster than should be possible. She took cover behind medical equipment and kept firing. We returned fire. We destroyed half the hospital trying to kill her. And she kept going. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. Then one of our explosive devices hit close to the wounded humans she was protecting. 3 of them died instantly, and something changed in that medic. Something broke. Or maybe something awakened. Vrextal looked directly at the committee. Humans have this thing they can do. When they are injured or frightened, their bodies release chemicals. Adrenaline, they call it. It makes them stronger, faster. It shuts down their pain receptors. It overrides their survival instincts. They become something between a thinking being and a pure predator. He continued, his voice shaking slightly. That medic went into what they call an adrenaline rage. She stopped taking cover. She walked toward us. We shot her. I personally saw 3 shots hit her body. She did not fall. She did not even slow down. The younger archivist made a small sound of disbelief. She ran out of ammunition for her pistol, Vrextal said, so she picked up a rifle from a dead soldier. When that ran empty, she used the rifle as a club. When that broke, she used a piece of medical equipment, a metal stand for holding fluid bags. She killed 17 soldiers with a piece of hospital equipment. His voice grew quieter. Our commander finally ordered a retreat. We fled from one wounded human female who should have been dead. We left that hospital and regrouped outside. When we sent drones back in, she was sitting on the floor still protecting her remaining patients. She had lost so much blood that the floor was red. She was holding pressure on a wound in her side. And she was still conscious. Still watching for threats, Vrextal paused. We did not go back in. We called for orbital support to destroy the building. And do you know what the human command did? They sent their fastest ships. They broke through our blockade. They evacuated that hospital while we were still calling in the strike. They lost 3 ships doing it, hundreds of crew, but they saved those wounded and that medic. The lead archivist spoke softly. Why are you telling us this particular story? Because that is when I understood what we were fighting, Vrextal said. We were not fighting for territory or resources. We were fighting a species that valued each individual member so highly that they would sacrifice everything to protect them. That medic was one human. One. And her people threw away ships and lives to save her, because she had thrown away her own life to save them. He leaned back, exhausted. Humans call it pack bonding. They form connections with each other, with their units, with complete strangers, and once those bonds are formed, they will die to protect them. It is not rational. It is not strategic. It is something deeper, something we do not have, Vrextal continued. After that, I started to understand the other stories I had heard. The human pilot who crashed his ship into our dreadnought to save his wingman. The human engineer who stayed behind on a damaged station to evacuate civilians she had never met. The human soldier who threw himself on a grenade to protect his squad. His voice grew heavy. We thought they were aberrations, exceptions. We thought most humans would be like us, rational, self-preserving. We were wrong. That is not the exception for humans. That is their baseline. They are all capable of that level of sacrifice. Every single one of them. The younger archivist spoke hesitantly. But surely that makes them vulnerable? If they value each other so much, you could use that against them. Vrextal's laugh was bitter. You think we did not try? We took hostages. We threatened civilians. We did everything we could to make them surrender. And it had the opposite effect. Every atrocity we committed made them fight harder. Every human we killed created 10 more who wanted revenge. Every colony we destroyed became a reason to never surrender. He looked at his missing arms. That medic, the one from the field hospital, I learned her name later. Dr. Sarah Chen. She survived her wounds. She went back to combat. She was at the final battle where I was captured. Where I lost these arms? Rextal's voice became very quiet. She was the one who treated my wounds after. She saved my life. The human I had tried to kill. The human whose patients I had helped murder. She worked on me for 6 hours to stabilize me, and when I asked her why, do you know what she said? The committee waited. She said, because you are wounded and I am a doctor. That is all. No anger, no revenge. She had sworn an oath to heal and she kept it, even for her enemies. He shook his head slowly. That is what makes humans terrifying. Not their violence. Not their persistence. It is that they have rules. They have honor. They have principles that they will die for, and those principles make them both the most dangerous and the most trustworthy beings in the galaxy. Rextal looked at each committee member. You asked me to tell you about the war, about the human front. This is what I learned. Humans are not like us. They bond with each other in ways we cannot understand. They sacrifice themselves for strangers. They keep fighting when any rational being would surrender. And they do it all while maintaining a code of behavior that they refuse to break. The lead archivist made a note. Your report mentions a final battle. The one where the war ended? Yes, Rextal said, and his voice was heavy with memory. The battle where I learned the last lesson? The one that High Command should have learned at the very beginning. He looked up at the recording crystal. Humans prefer peace. They truly do. But when you force them to make war, they are very, very good at it. The committee called for a brief recess. When they returned, Rextal had declined food but accepted more water. His 3 eyes looked distant, focused on memories that still haunted him after half a century. The final year of the war, he began without prompting. High Command knew we were losing, though they would not admit it publicly. We had started with overwhelming advantage. Superior technology, greater numbers, better logistics. But the humans had learned everything we knew and they had not stopped learning. He shifted uncomfortably. By year 9, human ships were as advanced as ours. Their weapons were more efficient. Their tactics were better. They had gone from a single planet species to controlling 40 star systems, and they were pushing us back. The lead archivist consulted her notes. The Confederation's forward command was located at Outpost Xerxes, a fortress station in neutral space. Fortress, Rextal repeated with dark humor. Yes, that is what we called it. It had shields that could withstand a supernova, weapons that could destroy a fleet, 30,000 troops. It was supposed to be impregnable. It was our final stronghold, our command center for the entire human front. His voice grew quieter. The humans reached it in December of 2196. We had known they were coming for weeks. We had prepared every defense. We had enough supplies for a year-long siege. Our commanders told us we would break the human offensive here. This would be where we turned the war around. Rextal paused. We were looking at this all wrong. We thought we were preparing for a siege. The humans were preparing for an execution. The younger archivist leaned forward, absorbed in the story. They arrived with 200 ships, Rextal continued. We had intelligence that they were coming with more, but only 200 jumped in. Our commander laughed. 200 ships against our fortress and our defensive fleet of 300. The mathematics favored us, he shook his head. We did not understand human mathematics. They do not calculate odds the way we do. We think in terms of acceptable losses and strategic value. Humans think in terms of objectives and determination. If they decide something must be done, the cost does not matter. Rextal's remaining hands gripped the armrests. They sent one message, just one. It was broadcast on all frequencies in perfect Confederation standard language. I remember it exactly. You have one opportunity to surrender. You have 30 minutes. Choose wisely. The archive chamber was silent except for the soft hum of the recording crystal. Our commander laughed again, Rextal said. He sent back a message of his own. He told them to try their best. He told them we would crush them like we should have crushed Earth. He told them that humanity would learn to respect the Confederation. Rextal closed his eyes. The 30 minutes passed, and then the humans showed us what they had learned from 9 years of war. He opened his eyes, and there was something haunted in them. The battle lasted 4 hours. It should have lasted weeks, months even. But the humans had learned everything about our technology. Every weakness, every vulnerability, every flaw. His voice grew more intense. They did not attack the way we expected. They did not try to overwhelm our shields with firepower. Instead, they used precision strikes on the shield generators. Weapons we had never seen before. technology they had developed specifically to counter our defenses. Our shields failed in the first 20 minutes. Vrextal continued, his words coming faster now. Then they boarded us. Not with dropships or assault craft. They used their small fighters. 1 or 2 humans per craft, flying at speeds that should have killed them from the acceleration. They crashed through our hangar bays and hull breaches. They came at us from 50 different directions at once. The lead archivist made a note. The reports mentioned that human forces seemed to know the station layout perfectly. They did know it, Vrextal said. That was another thing we did not understand until too late. Humans had infiltrated the station months before. They had people inside, mapping every corridor, every system, every weakness. When they attacked, they knew exactly where to go, exactly what to destroy, exactly how to cut off our responses. His voice dropped. I was commanding the defense of Section 7, engineering and life support. Critical systems. We had 5,000 troops in that section. Fortified positions, automated defenses, every advantage. He paused. The humans sent 300 soldiers. The younger archivist gasped. 300 against 5,000? Yes, Vrextal confirmed. And they won. Do you want to know how? They did not fight fair. They had learned that from us. We had taught them that there is no honor in war, only victory. So they used that lesson. Vrextal's voice became hollow. They gassed entire corridors. They used explosives to seal off reinforcement routes. They hacked our automated defenses and turned them against us. They moved through the station like they had lived there for years. Because some of them had. Those infiltrators who had mapped the station, they were part of the assault force, he continued, and his voice shook slightly. But the worst part was how they fought. We expected them to show mercy, to accept surrender. We were wrong. This was the final battle. They had decided this was where the war would end. And they fought like beings who had made peace with death. Vrextal looked at his missing arms. I lost these trying to hold Section 7. A human breaching team came through our final defensive line. I was reloading my weapon when one of them shot me. Both left arms deliberately, not kill shots. Disabling shots, his voice grew quiet. Then they moved past me, left me bleeding on the floor. They had more important targets, more critical objectives. I was no longer a threat, so they ignored me. That is how focused they were. That is how professional. The committee sat in silence as Vrextal continued. I lay there for 3 hours before the fighting in my section ended. I listened to the battle. I heard my soldiers dying. I heard the humans coordinating in their language. I heard our automated systems being destroyed one by one. And I heard something else. I heard the humans encouraging each other, supporting each other. Even in the middle of battle, they were checking on their wounded, calling out tactical information, working together like a single organism. He paused. That is what makes them unstoppable. They are individuals, yes, but in battle they become something more. They become a unit, a team, a pack, and that pack protects its own while destroying its enemies. Vrextal's voice grew stronger. When the battle ended, human medics came through the corridors. I expected them to execute the wounded. That is what we would have done. That is what any rational species does with enemies who cannot fight. Instead, they treated us. They stabilized wounds. They set up triage areas. They saved lives. The lead archivist spoke softly. This seems contradictory. They fought without mercy but then showed mercy to the defeated. That is what makes them terrifying, Vrextal said. They are not contradictory. They are consistent. They have rules. During the battle, we were enemies. They fought with everything they had. After the battle, we were prisoners. They treated us with dignity. Those are their rules. They do not change them based on convenience, he continued. The human who commanded the assault on Section 7 came to check on the wounded. I remember her. Commander Williams. She looked at me lying there, looked at my missing arms, and immediately called for a surgeon. She spoke to me in careful Confederation standard. She told me that I would receive medical care, that I would be treated fairly, that the war was over. Vrextal's voice became very quiet. I asked her why they had fought so hard for so long, why they had not just surrendered when we first arrived. We had been stronger, more advanced. The logical choice was to join us. He looked at the committee. Do you know what she said? She said, because you asked us to give up our freedom. That is not something humans do. We would rather die. The archive chamber was completely silent. That is when I understood, Vrextal said. We had not been fighting for territory or resources. We had been fighting against the concept of human freedom. And that is a fight no one can win. You cannot kill an idea. You cannot destroy a principle. You can only break the beings who hold it. And humans do not break? He leaned back in his chair, exhausted. The station fell in 4 hours. Our fleet was destroyed or scattered. Our command structure was eliminated. And the humans had done it with fewer losses than we inflicted on them. They had become better than us at our own type of war. Vrextal looked at each committee member. That was the end. High Command surrendered within a week. The Treaty of Earth was signed. The war was over, and humanity had won. The lead archivist made a final note. And the aftermath? That, Vrextal said heavily, is perhaps the most important part of this testimony. Because what the humans did after victory tells you everything you need to know about why we could never have won. Vrextal sat in silence for a long moment before continuing. The committee did not rush him. They understood that this final part of his testimony was perhaps the most important. The Treaty of Earth, he finally said. That is what they called it. We expected harsh terms. We had invaded their home. We had killed millions of their people. We had destroyed their colonies. By any measure, we deserved whatever punishment they chose to inflict. His 3 eyes focused on something far away. The human delegation arrived at our capital world 3 weeks after the battle at Outpost Xerxes. They came in a single diplomatic ship, unarmed, no escort. They walked into the Confederation Council chambers and presented their terms. The lead archivist leaned forward slightly. What were the terms? Peace, Vrextal said simply. That was the primary term. Immediate cessation of all hostilities. Withdrawal of all Confederation forces from human space. Recognition of human sovereignty over all systems they controlled. He paused. We expected more. Reparations, occupation, restrictions on our military. The things that victors usually demand. But the humans demanded none of that. Vrextal's voice grew thoughtful. Instead, they demanded something we did not understand at first. They demanded that the Confederation agree to a mutual defense pact. They demanded that we establish trade relations. They demanded cultural exchange programs. They wanted to talk to us, to work with us, to build a future together. The younger archivist looked confused. After 9 years of war? Yes, Vrextal confirmed. After 9 years of war. After millions dead on both sides. After atrocities and battles and hatred. The humans looked at us and said, now let us be friends. He shook his head slowly. We thought it was a trick, some kind of subtle revenge. We waited for the other demands, the punishments, they never came. The humans meant exactly what they said. The war was over. Now they wanted peace. Vrextal continued, his voice growing stronger. I was still in a human military hospital when the treaty was signed. I was receiving the best medical care available. Human doctors working alongside Confederation doctors. They were sharing medical technology, teaching each other, working together to save lives. He looked at his missing arms. A human doctor, Dr. Patel, told me that they could not regenerate my arms. Human technology was not that advanced yet. But he promised that they would work on it, that in a few years maybe they would find a way. He said this to me, to someone who had fought against his people for 9 years. The lead archivist made a note. The treaty included provisions for prisoner exchange and repatriation. Yes, Vrextal said. Every Confederation prisoner was returned home within 6 months, alive, healthy, treated with dignity. The humans did not keep slaves, they did not execute prisoners, they did not even demand labor or service. They just sent us home. His voice became quiet. I was in the 3rd wave of repatriation. When I arrived at the transport station, there was a human officer there. She was checking the manifest, making sure everyone was accounted for. She saw me and came over. I recognized her. Commander Williams, the one who had taken Section 7, the one who had promised me medical care. Vrextal paused, and his voice was thick with emotion. She asked me how I was healing. She asked if the medical care had been adequate. She told me that if I ever needed anything, there were support programs for veterans on both sides. Then she saluted me, a human commander, saluting a defeated enemy. The archive chamber was completely silent except for the soft hum of the recording crystal. "That is what broke me," Rextal said quietly. "Not the battles. Not the defeats. Not even losing my arms. That moment of respect from an enemy who had every reason to hate me. That is when I truly understood what we had fought against." He looked at the committee members. "Humans do not wage war because they enjoy it. They wage war because they believe in something worth fighting for. And when the war is over, they still believe in those same things. Peace, dignity, cooperation, second chances," Rextal continued, his voice growing thoughtful. "In the 50 years since the treaty, human ships have saved 17 Confederation colonies from natural disasters. Human medics have helped cure 3 major diseases that were killing our people. Human engineers have shared technology freely. Human diplomats have negotiated peace between species that had been fighting for generations." He paused. "And do you know what the humans asked for in return? Nothing. They consider it their responsibility. They call it being a good neighbor. They say that any species capable of traveling to the stars should help other species do the same." The younger archivist spoke hesitantly. "But surely they must want something, some advantage, some benefit." Rextal's expression was sad. "That is how we think. That is how most species think, but humans are different. They genuinely believe in cooperation, in mutual benefit, in raising everyone up together. It is not a strategy. It is their nature." He leaned forward. "Let me tell you what happened 5 years after the treaty. There was a species called the Korthax. They were aggressive, expansionist. They saw humanity's peaceful nature as weakness. They attacked a human colony world. Killed 15,000 humans in a surprise strike." Rextal's voice grew harder. "The Confederation Council watched to see what humanity would do. Would they return to war? Would they show their true colors? Would they prove that their peace was just an act?" He paused for effect. "The humans sent a fleet, 300 ships. They jumped into Korthax space and then they sent a message. The same message they had sent us at Outpost Xerxes. You have one opportunity to surrender. Choose wisely." The committee leaned in. "The Korthax refused," Rextal said. "They thought humans would negotiate, would show mercy, would hesitate." His voice dropped. "They were wrong. The humans destroyed the Korthax military in 6 hours. 6 hours. A war that should have taken years. The Korthax had not learned what we learned, that humans prefer peace, but they are very, very good at war." He continued. "But here is the important part. After the battle, the humans did not occupy Korthax worlds. They did not execute prisoners. They did not demand tribute. They did exactly what they did to us. They offered a treaty. They offered peace. They offered friendship." Rextal's voice became urgent. "And the Korthax accepted, because they learned the same lesson we learned. You cannot defeat humans in war. But you also do not need to. Humans do not want to conquer. They want to cooperate. They want to build something together." The lead archivist spoke carefully. "So, humanity has become the dominant military power in the galaxy." "Dominant?" Rextal considered the word. "Yes, I suppose so. But they do not use that dominance the way others would. They use it to keep peace, to protect weaker species, to prevent wars before they start. They call themselves peacekeepers, and they mean it." He looked at each committee member. "There are now 47 species in what humans call the Galactic Cooperative. All equal members, all with voting rights, all protected by human military might, and the humans only ask one thing in return, that we work together, that we help each other, that we never again try to conquer or enslave another species." Rextal's voice grew soft. "I have spent 50 years thinking about the war, about what we did wrong, about what we could have done differently, and I have come to one conclusion. We could not have won. Not because we were weaker, not because our technology was inferior, but because we were fighting against beings who had something worth dying for. And that is a fight no one can win." He paused. gathering his thoughts. Humans have a saying. I learned it from Dr. Chen, the medic who saved my life. She told me that humans believe you should walk softly but carry a big stick. I did not understand it at first. Now I do. Humans prefer peace. They will always choose peace if possible. But if you force them to war, they will show you why their planet is called Earth, why they evolved as apex predators, why they survived for millions of years as hunters. Vrextal looked directly at the recording crystal. This testimony is being sealed for 2 generations. When it is finally opened, I want my descendants to know this truth. I want all young Confederation members to understand. Humans are not our enemies. They are our allies, our friends, our protectors. But that friendship was earned through war, through blood, through learning the hardest lesson in galactic history. His voice grew firm. Never fight humans, never threaten them, never try to conquer them, because they will fight back with everything they have, and they will win. Not because they are stronger or smarter or more advanced, but because they refuse to give up, because they protect each other, because they have principles they will die for. Vrextal leaned back in his chair, exhausted. That is my testimony. That is what I learned from 9 years on the human front. That is the truth that cost us millions of lives and dozens of star systems to discover. The lead archivist spoke quietly. Is there anything else you wish to add? Vrextal was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice was almost a whisper. Yes, one more thing. I have lived 50 years since the war ended. 50 years of peace. 50 years of watching humans help rebuild what we destroyed. 50 years of seeing them work for a better galaxy. He looked at the committee with his 3 eyes, and there was something like wonder in them.